Okay, let's try this again. Hopefully this resolution will be a little bit better to see what's going on. I've also upped the font size in BlueJ, so hopefully that will help. So let's do 7.2 again. So you were told that you needed to create an instance variable to take care of the simple array. Remember, to declare an array, we need our square brackets, and we'll just call that variable data. Then in our constructor, we wanted to initialize the array to have the elements 1 through 9. So the first thing we need to do is initialize the constructor, right? So we need to, initialize the array. So we need to call the constructor and give it its initial size. Then we want a loop that will step through all the elements of the array and put the value 1 through 10 in it. So of course, to assign a value to an element of an array, we just need the array name, the index, and then we can put in whatever value we want. And we want it to be 1 through 10, so we would use I plus 1. And that's it for our constructor. So before you do anything else, we will want to test this. So we need our main method. And we need to call an instance of create an instance of our class so that we can call our constructor, etc. We don't need to pass in any information because you were told to just always set your data to this value. So we've called our constructor. Now we want to print our array, so we're going to need a little bit of a helper method there that will print the array for us when we want to, instead of rewriting a loop to print it every time. I prefer you did this rather than using the built-in array print. This is a good practice anyway. So we have to loop through the whole array, so I would just grab this guy here, bring it down, and instead of assigning a value, we just want to print out what's in there. For every element in the array, we'll put a space in between, and then when we're done, we'll print a blank line. So everything's not all ending up on the same line. So we've constructed our array, now let's print it. And how do we call our method? It's the class variable name that we constructed, and then the method name and any inputs it might need. And in this case, nothing. So let's compile that, see if we're okay. Yep. We'll give it a run. And that looks good. 1 through 10, that's exactly what we wanted. Okay, so let me just give that a nice heading so we know what's going on here as we're going through these methods. All right, so the first thing we needed to do was swap the first and last elements of the array. So let's copy over. I want some space in between our different outputs. So let's copy over our call block. And we'll call it swap element. Oops. And we're going to want to print our array after we call that. Okay, so we need to make this swap element method. So let's start out with our print array one. Well, actually, we won't need a loop, so let's just do this one from scratch. It's not going to return anything. And all we need to do is swap the first with the last. So we need to save that one or the other of them first. Otherwise, when we do the first swap, it's going to overwrite. So let's save the first one. Okay, and then we can swap our last element into the first one without worrying about overwriting it. We're going to put that into the first one. Okay, so we have temporarily saved what's in the first element. We've taken the last element, right, out of the simple array data at this location. This will always give us the last element, and we're putting it into the first location. And then what we want to put in the last location is the one that we temporarily saved. Okay, so this should do that. We're calling it. Everything's all ready to test. Let's give this a run. Okay, so let me just clean that up. Oh, we have to change our heading. This is the swapped array. Okay, good. So we have our original array, we have our swapped array, worked perfect. The next one we have to do is a little bit more complicated. We want to shift all the elements by 1 to the right and then move the last element into the first position. So let's set up our call block. This is going to be our shifted array. We need a new method. Call it shift right. And then we still want to print. Okay, now we are going to have to loop, so let's start out maybe with this guy to add it off of. And we called it shift array, so let's just grab that. Okay, now we are going to want to go through every position, but this is going to be a little bit unique. We're shifting items from left to right, so we're overwriting the rightmost position each time we shift. So we don't want to go in the wrong direction. We don't want to go from left to right, or else we'll lose when we take the item in position 0 and put it in position 2. Our next one, excuse me, position 0 to position 1. Our next one would go from position 1 to position 2, but we've just overwritten position 1, and so we've lost that data. So we want to go in the reverse direction. We want to go from right to left, and that would solve that problem. So then the only other thing we have to do is just save that last guy, so when we do that initial overwrite of the first one, we don't lose it. So let's temporarily, whoops, we'll save the last. And then we're going to start shifting to the right from the right. So we want to start out at the last position there. Oops, Allison, here we go. Up here. And we're going to do that until we get to the end of the beginning of the array. So we're going to do that as long as we're greater than 0, and we're going to decrement down because we're going from right to left. Okay. Okay, and then what we want to do there is we're shifting to the right. So if we're taking data sub I, that last position, what we want to go into there is the one just before that. And we're going to do that all the way from the right to the left. Then the last step would be to put in the first position the one that we saved temporarily. And that should do us. Okay, let's compile. We did everything right down here. Okay, let's give this one a run. Okay, so we have our original, we have our swapped, then we have our shifted one. So the 10 went to the second, the 2 went to the third, etc. Everybody got shifted over by 1. And the last element got moved to the beginning. Okay, I'm stopping this one here, and I'll do the rest in another one.